We're going to take a little bit of a different look at a photo shoot here. I'm going to actually show you through the camera of a segment of a bird photography shoot. Then we'll look at the photos that I took, and then we'll even do a quick edit at the end of it. So almost a different take on a start to finish here, actually through the camera. A little bit of the behind the scenes to this is essentially I'm using a Sony A1 Mark II. I think in the video I'm using a 400, the 400 to 800 when I was testing it out. And then I have this Ninja Atmos recorder that attaches via HDMI. It's got a hard drive attached to it. It allows me to record everything that the camera is seeing, okay? So that's how I'm able to do it. You'll see the settings on the screen here. I'm not going to go into each setting and talk about the why behind each setting. So if you are curious as to that, I'll put a link in the description. I've got it's a free bird photography webinar. It's kind of an on-demand webinar, so it might show you times you can sign up. I recorded it once, but it's posted to Facebook. It's like 35 minutes long, and there's like 1,000 comments of people raving about it. So it's really good, all good content, and it jumps right in from the get-go. So go to that if you want to learn more about the actual settings in there. But it's the one thing I will cover here. So a couple things about this. This little recorder, it does shut off on Sony cameras, the viewfinder and the screen. So you have to hold it like this. So if it looks shaky, it is shaky because it's like over 10 pounds and it gets really, really heavy to handhold. And I'm not going to use a tripod because it's too limiting. So if it looks shaky, it is, but I just suck it up and I do it because I get the best photos that way. I use generally a fixed center point to lock focus on something. In Sony cameras, I have tracking turned on, so once I lock that focus, it will track the subject around. I don't have to keep trying to keep it into that one little center point there. So as we shift over onto the beach here, you're going to see that small fixed center point start out, and that's what I'm using in the beginning. And then tracking's turned on. So once I lock focus on, it'll track it around the whole viewfinder, or the whole frame. And then I have eye detection turned on, which may or may not always pick up. It doesn't really matter too much. I could really almost care less about eye detection. So you could see the reddish egrets moving around here. I'm at f8, which I think is the widest aperture for the lens I was using. I think I was testing out the Sony 400 to 800 for this. I have auto ISO on, so ISO might change. And I got my shutter speed pretty high at 4,000th because these guys move fast. There's a lot of light. 2500 ISO on a Sony A1 or A1 Mark II is absolutely nothing. So I wouldn't even think about it here, and I'd rather go for a faster shutter speed. You can see somebody's kneeling on the ground back there. That's you got to get down low. It's non-negotiable. I know not everybody has the mobility. Figure it out. Bring a little camping chair with you. Bring a little ground tripod. You got to. For shorebirds, you have to get down low. You cannot shoot down on them. Got to get down low if you want the good quality pictures there. So I'm waiting here. These guys are usually pretty active. This one's not so much, but there's one moment, and it only takes one moment. Pretty close, pretty close. I started shooting, bam, right there. That's the only shot we need. Now let's switch gears into looking at these photos. I don't want to make this a big editing tutorial, but I do want to show you the photo that I chose and some quick steps on how I edited it. I'm using Lightroom. I use Lightroom. I don't use Lightroom Classic anymore. It's just a very simple photo browser and I love it, but it doesn't really matter. Import your photos into whatever you do. So you can see this is along the lines. There we go. So that was the magic moment right there. Okay, and that's probably the only moment I got that entire moment, or that entire morning. But I consider that a success. If you walk away with one good photo, you should be happy. So you can see there's the dive into the water, which is cool. In fact, I'm going to zoom in here. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit. Dive into the water, which is cool. You can see the fish starting to emerge. You can see it hanging off the side there. Let's scoot this down a little bit. All right. Now, I'm not quite sure why, if he did it on purpose, but he drops it and then watches it and then goes to grab it again and then does grab it again. That's the shot I like the most. I love I call it the hair. I guess it's feathers, but it looks like hair. So you could see everything up top there. You can see all that detail. You can see him, dropping down. You can see the splashes of water, all that stuff. A couple of good ones after that I'll show you. They always do this after they catch it. They whip it back and forth and then hold it up there and then usually pop it up into the air and gone. So that's a fun one too, but I always like some of the other ones a little bit better. So this one was my favorite one. Okay, so I would go into editing this. There's not a lot of noise to this photo. It was ISO 2500, I think, which on a Sony A1 or A1 Mark II is really not anything bad. So you could, of course, use the detail section inside of Lightroom or Camera Raw and do some noise reduction. I tend to use Topaz Photo AI a little bit more. I'm in Lightroom, so it's really easy for me to get there. However, whatever program you're using, you can get into a plugin. I just right-click, Show in Finder. There's a file, Open With, and Photo AI. It literally takes me 4 seconds to get there, and then that'll pop it open in Photo AI. Really quick, I know there's always a lot of questions when it comes to this stuff on settings and why I chose this over this and whatnot. I'm still going to point you to that webinar I mentioned earlier. It is totally free to watch. It is 35 minutes of non-stop content. I promise it's not one big sales pitch. It is good content, and it will answer your questions about all that stuff. So just click that link when you have time to watch it. It's going to look like it's a timed webinar. It's more of just an on-demand thing that I recorded a while ago. So when you have some time to give to it, just click that link. And as I said, it's free to watch. So we'll get back to the video here where I was about to open up Photo AI to do some noise reduction and sharpening. You can see here, since it's a raw photo, it'll run raw denoise on it, and then I add a sharpening step. The only change I make typically is I just make the auto selection to only work on the subject there. So you can see that's before and that's after. Again, it's fairly negligible. The noise wasn't bad. The photo was already sharp, and this just does a little bit more. From there, I export this. It'll export as a DNG, put it into the same folder. Once I do that, again, whatever program you're using, if you're using Lightroom Classic and you're using a plugin from there, it'll get put into your catalog. Because this is Lightroom, it just gets put into the same folder. Now I can go in there and edit. I didn't do too much to the photo. I think let's back out a little bit. First things first, got to go in there and crop it quite a bit. Something down to there, I think looks pretty good. Take a little bit off the top. Okay, so do a little bit of cropping on it. From there, I really just hit auto. Auto does a good job. Auto makes it a little contrasty for me. It always does, so I'm always dialing back the blacks, but it's just personal taste. I like a muted palette of colors typically. A lot of people like a little bit more contrast. It's your taste. So I'm always less contrast, and I just like that muted palette of colors I typically get, especially with my bird photography, not necessarily the landscapes. Might make that overall a little bit brighter. Go down here to color, take the eyedropper. Remember, the feathers are mostly gray. We'll click on those, and that's going to neutralize it. I don't know that neutral is right, so I'm just going to go cheat it back toward a little bit of warmth since this was morning, so nothing too crazy there. Last thing I would probably do is go to my eraser tool. Not even going to use generative AI for this, just go to the eraser. Just a couple of little spots. There was one there I didn't like. There was one right there I didn't like. And then there were a couple just darker spots up at the top that I thought we could probably go in there and get rid of. So nothing too crazy there. So that about finishes up the edit process on it. I can zoom in there. Looks good. I can hit the backslash key. You can see before, after, before and after. So nothing too crazy when it comes to our editing. And from there, you just export it into whatever format that you need to share it with. So hopefully that gives you a different look into a wildlife photography shoot. Start to finish, very, very difficult to do, because unless you're going to walk around with this stupid recorder that on there and shoot the way that I was shooting all of the time, which is really not feasible. You never know when that magical shot is going to happen, but I was lucky that a good one happened while I had it on there. So feel free, leave your, if you like this, feel free to leave any comments or questions down in the comments below. If you don't like it, no need to leave a comment. You're not the intended audience there. And then lastly, I'll forward you to a video I did a little while back on some post-processing, dives a little bit more deeper into that sharpening and noise reduction that I talked about there. So typically always follows shooting high ISOs, low light photography and things along those lines. So that's a great one to go watch next if you have a little bit of time.